Hey guys, Rick Stone here from Stony Acres Gardening. Welcome to my channel. So today we are going to be talking about 10 vegetables that you can plant that will survive freezing. So these are all plants that are going to take some pretty cold temperatures with some protection like a cold frame or a hoop house. They may even survive, some of them all the way down to about 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of them are going to do really well all the way down to like 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So these guys are pretty hardy and are going to do a really good job of surviving through the winter if you get them planted at the right time. So I know some of you are here just for the list, and so I'm going to give you the list first, then we're going to take a minute and go through and talk about each one of them. So here are the 10 plants that we have had really good success with in cold winter temperatures. Spinach, parsley, kale, Swiss chard, Claytonia, Mache, Totsoy, carrots, turnips, and parsnips. So all of those are the plants that we're going to be talking about in this video. Here's the key to having plants survive through the winter and being able to harvest from them during the winter. It's getting them planted at the right time. So even if you live as cold as like maybe zone 4, you can make this happen, but you need to make sure that those plants are mature before we get to the really cold time of year. So you want to be planting all of these plants that we're going to talk about today 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost date in the fall. That is going to allow them to get mature enough so that you can see all of these were planted right about that time frame, about 6 weeks before, and they'll get mature enough so that you can actually use them during the winter time. All right, so let's go through and talk about each one of these plants just really briefly and maybe describe them a little bit. So the number one on the list, and probably my favorite for winter time, is spinach. So we love spinach. It is super hardy, one of the hardiest plants that you can grow. All it needs is the simple protection of a hoop house or a cold frame, and it's going to continue to produce through the winter. These plants are going to survive. They'll you'll have leaves that you can harvest all winter long, and then you will have another harvest in the spring as they kind of put on that final growth before they bolt and go to seed. So spinach is a great plant, survives really well down. We've had it survive down below 10 degrees Fahrenheit and still make it through the winter. The biggest struggle you're going to have with spinach is getting it to germinate in the fall, and that's our biggest struggle. This year we have about a dozen plants kind of mixed in here in this bed that we're able to germinate, but these are going to make it all the way through the winter. We'll be harvesting from them in January and February, and they are great. So spinach is an awesome choice. Next on the list is parsley. So parsley is the only herb on our list. Parsley is very hardy, but it does need protection. So it's not going to be able to be out in the main garden without some protection. So you want to have it in a hoop house or a cold frame to keep some of those really severe temperatures off. But again, we've had parsley make it all the way through the winter, and it's a good little herb that's kind of a leafy green that you can use to add flavor to your dishes during the winter. Next on our list is a really fun one, and that is Claytonia. So a lot of people don't know about Claytonia. It's also sometimes called miner's lettuce, and it is native to California, especially kind of the northern areas of California, and it's a weed there. But it is now, people have cultivated it, and we can buy seeds from it, and it is a very cold hardy plant that will actually continue to grow even during the low light times of the winter and do super well. So Claytonia is a fun plant to grow. It's not huge, so it's not something that you're going to survive off, but it's fun to have Claytonia around to add a little bit of variety to your salads and stuff during the wintertime. So Claytonia, really good choice. Again, very hardy. It's going to make it down to below 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So good choice for freezing weather. Another one that goes along with Claytonia that is also not as well known as some of the others is Mache. So Mache is also known sometimes as corn salad, and it is another very, very hardy plant. Probably the hardiest of all the plants we're going to talk about today. It will do well all the way down below 10 degrees Fahrenheit. It continues to grow even in the low light conditions of winter, and so it's a really good choice. It has a nice nutty flavor to it. It's great for salads. It's not a really good cooked green, but it is really good for salad greens and has this really great taste to it, and a really good option. Now, the one thing about Mache that's different from everything else we're talking about today is it does not like warm weather, and so it needs to be planted a little bit later than everything else. So you're going to plant Mache about 4 weeks before your first frost date. As the weather starts to cool off in September, that will be a better time for you to plant Mache. But beyond that, it's really good. It's going to make it all the way through the winter. We had some that last year we were eating in April that was planted in August. And so great option for hardy winter crops. For this next one, I'm going to reach over here because we've got some in this cold frame. This is Totsoy. So Totsoy is also a favorite of many of our local pests apparently, because this one's full of holes. But Totsoy is another really good hardy plant, probably almost as hardy as spinach. It is an Asian green, and so it's going to give you kind of the flavor profile of maybe like bok choy. Totsoy is just you know, kind of similar to that, but it looks different. It's not like bok choy where it gets that really big heavy stalk to it. This is about all the stalk that you're going to see. It grows more kind of in a rosette like a spinach would. Really good option, very hardy. You're going to plant that one about 8 weeks before your first frost, and it's going to last all winter long. Next on our list is kale. And I moved over here because we actually have a little bit of kale growing. This is some late planted kale. We didn't get this in until about the 1st of September. So this will overwinter and then be a very early harvest for us in the spring. So we've got it here in a hoop house, and it will be protected over the winter time. It should probably start growing again about the first part of February, maybe middle of February. This is going to take off and will just give us a big, huge harvest in March and April especially, before it bolts and goes to seed. So kale is actually probably the hardiest of all the plants we talked about. Maybe Mache is a little bit hardier than kale, I don't know. I have had kale here in our Zone 6B garden survive out in the open over the winter. And so it is just super hardy and super good. The other nice thing about kale in the wintertime is it tastes different, okay? A lot of people don't like the taste of kale. Kale in the winter sweetens up. The starches in the plant turn into sugars, and it actually sweetens up, and it's a totally different vegetable this time of year. And so kale, this one is going to be one of those ones that will survive even down in Zone 4. It's going to make it all the way down to probably 0 degrees Fahrenheit with some protection. It's got to have some protection, but it's a great crop for wintertime. One other leafy green that we need to mention is Swiss chard. So Swiss chard is not quite as cold tolerant as spinach and kale, but it will do pretty well. It's going to survive down to about 15 degrees Fahrenheit with some protection. We like to grow some Swiss chard even in a hoop house or a cold frame, and that is going to give us a supply of leaves kind of throughout the winter. There have been years where we have grown like maybe a half a cold frame full of Swiss chard and used that quite a bit. So fun one that again will survive well in the cold. The last 3 on our list are root crops. So they are carrots, turnips, and parsnips. All 3 of these are very winter hardy. Part of that is because they are a root crop. They do require a little bit of protection. We like to grow ours in a cold frame, but you could probably just get away with a hoop house. They'll do okay in a hoop house. The cold frame offers the ability for us to keep the ground a little less frozen, and so it's a little bit easier to harvest those. Again, we want to plant these about 8 weeks before our first frost, and that's going to let them mature. So we've got some turnips here, and the turnips do really well. This particular variety is called Hikuri, and it is a really good, designed specifically for winter, and great tasting, and just does really well in the wintertime. And you can see we're already almost to the end of December, and these are doing well. Next we have carrots, and carrots are a great option this time of year, if for no other reason than the taste. So again, because of the cold, the starches in the carrots actually get converted into sugars, and these are the sweetest, tastiest carrots that you are ever going to eat. We love wintertime carrots. They taste like candy. They're just amazing. One of our favorite vegetables to grow in the wintertime. And they're going to survive all the way through the winter because they're in the ground. If you give them a little bit of protection, they're going to be in really good shape. But you can even grow them out in the open and then just cover them with some straw or something, and then just go out when you've got a nice warm day and dig some up. That requires a little bit of prying out of the ground, which is why we put ours in a cold frame, because that tends to keep the soil from really freezing super hard, and it makes it easier for us to harvest. But carrots are a great option. And then we also have parsnips. Parsnips also sweeten up really well and taste really nice in the wintertime. The one thing that you need to be aware of with parsnips, they take longer to grow than turnips and carrots, quite a bit longer. So parsnips usually take about 120 days to mature. If you tack on a little extra time in the fall because of the declining light, we're looking at more like 130, 140 days. And so if you want mature parsnips for the winter, you have to plant them in the summer. So we're talking middle of June, first part of July, you need to get those parsnips in order for them to be mature enough for you to harvest them all through the winter. But they are a very hardy crop and again sweeten up really nicely. So all of these different crops will survive cold weather. Now, again, remember, I'm saying that they're going to survive down to below 10 degrees Fahrenheit, but they do need protection. So you need to have a cold frame or a hoop house over them in order for them to actually survive. But with that protection, you should be able to harvest all the way through the winter, even down as cold as zones 4, and still have a lot of these crops. All of these are super hardy, and we love them as wintertime crops. Just a ton of fun. Now, do we grow each one of these, all 10 of them, every year? No. This year we're only growing 5 of them. We have some Swiss chard, we have spinach, we have turnips and carrots and kale. And last year we grew a ton of Mache and some Claytonia, and along with spinach and carrots and things like that. So we'll kind of rotate through and you know, do some different ones every year, but it's a lot of fun to do this in the wintertime, and these 10 crops are really going to be hardy and really do well for you. All right, well, that is your 10 crops that will survive the winter. If you're interested in learning more about how to make this whole winter gardening thing happen, I do have a free mini course that you can go join. It's our year-round gardening mini course, 45 minutes long, 100% free. There's a link in the description of this video that you can click on to go check it out and learn a little bit more about how to grow in the wintertime. Okay, that's all I have for you for this week. Everybody have a fantastic week. Happy gardening.